I am going to talk a little bit about kind of going beyond some of what Maria and Tanya were talking about near the end about, activities and trying to bring your residents together during this time of physical distancing. So over the years, those of you that have been around for a while know my favorite program is the B'nai B'rith Resident Leadership Retreat. And anyhow, that's every other summer. It is not this summer, thank goodness, because if it's next summer, we still have a fighting chance of holding it next summer. If not, we're looking at 2022. But every other summer, we hold the Resident Leadership Retreat, which is where it's open to a couple of your residents, usually resident leaders, usually officers from the Residents Association or very active residents in the association. And we take them to B'nai B'rith Pearlman Camp for a week of leadership training, intergenerational programming. But we spend a lot of time with them. And some of the things that come up are adult bullying, dealing with difficult residents. And those are the same things that come up in our managers and service coordinators training. So over the years, spending time, and even the board members talking about some of this. So over the years, kind of developed training about dealing with difficult residents, with adult bullying. And so I kind of took a look at that and thought, could I modify some of this for COVID-19? So that's what I did. And then I read a really interesting article in the Washington Post. I'm going to send you all the article after this training, but I'm going to kind of summarize it for you. And it's really insightful. It's called Americans Are Living in a Big Anger Incubator. And experts have tips for regulating our rage. So I'm going to kind of do a synopsis with kind of what's going on. And one of the trainings, so learning from all of you, what are the issues in the buildings, and hearing it from these different perspectives kind of gave me an idea to do the difficult residents training. And some of it is perspective too, because some of those residents that you find very difficult have no idea they're difficult. They think they're the most helpful people, and in their heart they are. They just, the way they express it sometimes can make them kind of difficult for others. So I modified this. We're going to talk a little bit about this. And again, I don't know, I will try and see the chat, but sometimes I'm not that good. So if there's things on chat, Gracie, can you just pipe in? I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, always. We've gone over this a lot of times. Be kind, say nice things, Don't just say the first thing that pops in your mouth. And we go over this in our leadership workshops too. Well, everybody's fighting their own battle, but add to that now, we're all fighting a battle against COVID-19. And because we need to be physically distant, and a lot of time that means socially too, it feels like we're all fighting this new battle on our own. So we're all fighting our own battles, and now you add one that everybody's fighting, but sometimes it seems like we're in it alone. It's overwhelming. It really is. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Again, I don't know why, but I cannot. Okay, there we go. So let's talk about some of the challenges that were in your building before, and they're still there, but now you got a pandemic to deal with. So these are like the diversity of your community. We want to think that is a good thing, and it is, and it can be turned that way. And that's something we really talk about and explore, in especially the Resident Leadership Retreat, because these are the people that are living with that diversity. Some buildings, the diversity can be, you just have people from all over the world. Other diversity could be of a building, could just be people from another state. But still, sometimes we see people as us and them still. So the diversity of the community sometimes does make the us versus them. So it can be a challenge. And let's face it, sometimes it's like, it's increased the challenges, the us versus them. You know, I think the one we see the most is the mask issue. And we're going to explore that a little bit. But knowing, hearing from you all in these check-ins, Zoom check-ins that we've been having by the week, most communities now, whether it's at the state or local level, have some sort of mask mandate, which kind of takes you all as management, service coordinators out of it, just saying, this is a state order or a city order. We just have to follow it, and we have to make sure everybody's safe. So you still have difficult people. You still have rude people in your building. You know, it just is the way it is. And one of the issues is lack of empathy. And we've really talked a lot about empathy before, but we're going to talk some more about that. Sources of frustration. Some of these were prior to COVID-19. Now we've got more. So sources of frustration from the residents, and actually all of us, let's face it, everybody's feeling some of these emotions. Lack of physical social interaction. You know, I mean, I went to our office to do the, you know, the training the past 2 days, and I saw more people that I've interacted with for a long time, and there was still only like 4 people. I know you're dealing with a lot more people than I am, but it was like, except for going to the grocery store and walking around where, you know, we're still crossing the street. If you see a couple people on the sidewalk, I go across the street to the other sidewalk. You know, it's a real lack of physical social interaction. I know a lot of your residents are going through that. A feeling of being expendable. For those that don't know, I have very elderly parents. They're both in their 80s. My mom will be 85 later in a couple of months, and my dad is almost 88. And they have a lot of health conditions, and they live in their own home. So it's really convenient when I have to go quite a few days a week to go help them out, but I love them, and they're great people. And we've gotten really close during all this, so that's the plus. But I sometimes felt a little angry that I felt like whether my parents or our residents, you know, it was like, well, it's just older people getting this. And that's really, that left my parents feeling expendable. We're always like, no, 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 we love you. You're so important to us. And, you know, so I know your residents are feeling that too. Feeling that they don't matter, you know? And especially like I have had to get on my brother and sister who live far away, don't live in the area, to call my parents a lot, because especially the days I can't be there. Feeling powerless. And that's something even prior to COVID. A lot of your residents were moving in, even though we're like, oh, you know, they're moving into this wonderful building, and they pay a third of their, or 30% of their income in rent. You know, I mean, they're the lucky ones. They are. But so many of the residents are moving in at a loss. They maybe have lost their health. They lost their job. You know, even retirement means that you may have had to leave your job before you were ready. You know, loss of spouse, loss of health. They lost their house. I remember during 2008, that recession we had, a lot of people lost their houses. And I know a lot of people moved into the buildings having lost their lives in a way. And so they were moving in at a loss, and it's really hard. And transitioning from a home, you know, we all know that, a big home. I think Mark, my boss, is going through that right now, but on his own terms. They're moving from a bigger home to a smaller home, you know, because, you know, aging in place. So not to pick on you, Mark. But when you don't,
I'm getting older, Janelle. I'm not. Yeah.
But not being able to do that on your own terms is even tougher. So, and I've talked to some residents that they sometimes say they feel like they're being treated like a child. And I know that's not what's going on. It's just that they don't get to make all the decisions anymore. And sometimes HUD is making those decisions too. So it's not just big bad management, but that's sometimes the feeling. And now can you imagine you're being told by your own city or state that you have to wear this mask? So there is that, you know, I don't have a choice. Some people accept it. I know I wear my mask everywhere and I have no problem with it, but I know a lot of people, it feels like they're being told what to do. And when you're being told what to do, sometimes you feel like a child. And loss of independence and choices, you know, that was pre-COVID, and now you're stacking on that loss of independence. You know, you're vulnerable. Don't go to the grocery store. Don't go out. Don't see anybody. So, you know, independence and choices are being taken away from people. So it's really frustrating. So you can see sometimes where the mask thing can come up. Okay, so another thing we talk about is communication and how we are perceived by others. And so I looked at it in a different way when I thought about it, because a lot of our communication now is by phone, which isn't so easy. My father wears hearing aids, but he still can have trouble hearing. So the telehealth, the Zoom things have actually been really good for him. And we've set him up. He just got a laptop for the first time, almost 88. He's got a laptop with a camera and everything. So that he can do Zoom calls with the family too, because it's so much easier than the phone. He has to put the phone on speakerphone and he misses stuff. And when we do these videos, he can see us. And it's more like conversation, and it's just so much easier for him. So I see that because there's things about our communication that we don't convey over the phone. So some of you have probably seen this a million times, but how much of our time spent communicating is verbal? And I'm going to give the answers, so I don't need to make everybody unmute. 25%. So really 25% of in a non-COVID world, 25% of your communication is verbal on average. Now, clearly other people may be a little different, but it's verbal for an average person. 75% of our communication is nonverbal. So by just talking to people on the phone, they're missing 75% of our communication. And that's significant. So words are 7% effective. Tone of voice is 38% effective. And nonverbal clues are 55% effective. So if you're just hearing it, and clearly we probably change how we communicate when we're doing it just by phone, but I seriously doubt it's enough that we're making up for that, you know, connection, that nonverbal connection. That's why conference calls are hard, because you can't even see the other person. So you can't even know when they're going to start talking, or if somebody's stopped and really stopped talking, or if they just took a pause for a couple of seconds. So we're frustrated not having face-to-face interactions. Telephone conversations, emails, texts, paper communications don't give us the social cues that we need to feel connected to the community and to the other person we're talking to, or people. So that's also a source of frustration, because and I get it. I mean, at some point, some of our tools, that's all we have is the phone, because we have residents that are not going to have a laptop or a tablet or something that they can do a FaceTime or a Zoom. And it is the phone, and it's better than nothing. But just remember that it, again, is self-limiting and is not a replacement. And I think you all know that, but just giving you a little context that we're really missing a social interaction, a huge part of that interaction when it's just a phone. So, causes of anger pre-pandemic. And if anybody has any comments, please let me know. I don't think I can see the chat box here, so I think, Gracie, you will have to do that, or Evan. these are all pre-pandemic, but they're during pandemic too. We talked about the frustration that can cause annoyance. Fear, let's face it. This is a fearful time. Stress, confusion, memory loss, change in cognitive ability. Imagine going through that and thinking that, you realize you may be starting to have diminished capacity and you've got the pandemic. It's just the fear. Change in physical ability. I mean, people are still getting diagnosed with cancer or, in my mom's case, Parkinson's during all of this. Things are still happening outside of COVID-19. And really that feeling of powerlessness. It was pre-pandemic in a lot of your residents, and it's even magnified even more now. We're all feeling powerless sometimes. Loss of control and choices we already talked about, and projection, expectations. And it can be, people are really projecting, well, that's not the way I would deal with it. And sometimes it's like, well, yeah, but that's not exactly wrong either. But if somebody doesn't react or do something that you would do yourself, and you have an expectation that that's the way it should be done, it can be magnified in times like this. So talk about lack of empathy. Empathy is the experience of understanding another person's condition from their perspective, placing yourself in their shoes and feel what they're feeling. When we ourselves are going through tough times, we sometimes forget that others may be going through their own tough times. And so whatever people are going through right now, they sometimes, because we are physically distant, we sometimes forget that everybody else is going through this too. We bring all our baggage, and we've added COVID-19 baggage too. And so when we talk about masks, and we're going to talk somewhat about anger, and people that don't want to wear masks versus those that do, sometimes they're just, it's kind of a lack of empathy, because they're so wrapped up in their own world and their loss of choices that this is one of the few choices they can make. And so we have to figure out ways to help them come to the realization that the choice to make would be to help everybody else. And that would be to wear the mask, or at least to follow the law or the mandate. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this Washington Post article on anger, and I will send it to everybody. I thought it was so well written. This Elizabeth Chang, and it was published June 30th, 2020. She interviewed lots of different behaviorists, psychologists, psychiatrists. It was just, I thought, a really good article. I read the Washington Post, so that's why I just picked up on it. And when I saw something about anger, I thought, oh my gosh, because we had just had one of our Zoom calls and talking about residents not wanting to wear masks and how some of this stuff was playing out. It made me want to read it. So, Americans are living in a big anger incubator. And that's that fear and lack of choices and feeling powerless. So there's a lot of anger. There is anger at public officials. Some that they didn't do enough or they went too far. And we see that playing out in the masks. Because we also know some people are really angry that others aren't wearing masks, and they show that too. Anger at being told to wear a mask, or anger at those who won't wear a mask. I don't know if anybody's on some of these neighborhood network things. I have an app, and it's specifically for my neighborhood here in DC. And the most commented thing was somebody commenting a couple of days ago saying, just wear a mask. And there's so many comments, but most of them were pro-mask, but a few were like, it's my choice. And I think we know that sometimes it's not your choice. You're affecting everybody. And I think that's what we want to try to get across. But people feel like it's still that choice they can make. Anger at anyone that doesn't see things the right way, which is their own way. And we see that playing out politically too. It's all the result of feeling powerless. I mean, really, I think the pandemic showed that, you know, we all want to be in control, and it's so hard when we can't be. And a lot of your residents already realized that a while ago before the pandemic. So this is just one more thing that they can't control. Uncertainty as both a cognitive and emotional state is one that people want to resolve. Anger allows you to leave your feelings of uncertainty for a while and occupy a space and sensibility of certainty, clarity, and confidence. So a lot of those people that say they're not going to wear a mask, I mean, they're really confident about that, but it's giving them a boost. It's making them feel confident because they took this stand and they're making a choice. So, you know, we've got to figure out ways to turn that around and that give them the confidence to make the choice to help others. So an unmanaged anger can erupt into aggressive behavior against others. So there's 3 antidotes. I'm sure there's more, but brought it down to the A's, the 3 A's: appreciation, affiliation, and aspiration as the 3 antidotes to anger. And so I'm going to read you what they wrote about these. So the 3 antidotes help prevent anger from taking hold. So appreciation means paying attention not to what angers you, but to things that contribute to positivity in your life. Affiliation means nurturing our relationships. That can also be like the resident association can be part of that affiliation, being part of the community of your building. Aspiration means striving to accomplish things that are bigger than yourself or that serve other people. Wearing a mask helps save the community. It helps save those around you, whether it's the staff, the other residents, family members. So I think that's really important to convey. Acknowledge the anger and anxiety. That's okay to feel this way, but to channel that energy in a constructive way. You do not have to be powerless. Powerless is not wearing a mask. Taking power and taking control of the situation, you wear a mask. I'm just using that as an example. Helping others can also give you that sense of control. I'm controlling my destiny, and I'm helping to control the destiny of others so that they will survive this. So here's some solutions that we can think of. And we already talked about this. Using local or state mandates to enforce mandatory wearing of masks and physical distancing. So hopefully your state or city, locality, whatever, has done the mandatory. And if they haven't, you know, this is a good thing to advocate for with your local officials or state officials, that it would be so much more helpful for that, for the mandatory masks and physical distancing. And enforce the terms of the lease and house rules to keep peace between the residents. And that's especially regarding political messages, regardless of how you feel about the issue. We were kind of talking about that on Tuesday with Amanda Atkins, and talking about trying to keep politics out of the building. I know it's really tough. I don't think you can, I have no idea about controlling like what people wear as a t-shirt, I assume, if it's not offensive words, but certainly keeping political messages, you know, not on their door and that kind of stuff, that is somewhere in your house rules. Creating a sense of community. We're all in this together as a community, and we need to watch out for our most vulnerable members of the community. And that's some way to explain to those residents that are really resistant to wear the mask. Now, some people have, you know, a real reason they can't. A lot of these mask mandates do take that into account. Usually then they say you still need to have some sort of covering, whether it be those face shields or a bandana, you know, but that we're all in this together and we're working together. And I have seen what a lot of you have done. You know, of course, the masks, if you're requiring those in your building, that you're saying it could be a lease violation, or that you know, I know a lot of you have been doing words, you know, encouragement, words of encouragement, that kind of stuff. We're in this together. You know, we're still here. We may be on the phone. You may not be able to physically come into our office, but we're all in this together. And we're here to keep you safe. And this is one of the ways that we're doing it, keeping you safe. So I hear you all. I see you all. You're talking about all this. So it's just reinforcing that. And, you know, sometimes just listening to someone, I know it's hard sometimes to have someone come and just vent, or I guess on the phone too, but sometimes that's just all it takes, is someone just wants to be heard and finally just saying, yes, I understand. These are very, very valid reasons. I understand what you're saying, but we have a mask mandate in our city and we have to enforce it to keep everybody safe. That's our priority, is to keep everybody safe. So, and again, respectful. They need to be respectful. And unfortunately, a lot of you, you're going to have to do that by the phone, but, you know, making sure that it's kept in a calm manner. And if anyone needs, when we've done this difficult residence, we've also done ways to de-escalate, like if somebody's very upset. So I'll send that out again. Usually it's just trying to speak in a calm voice, saying their name, you know, just being respectful. And usually that calms the other person down and they can keep kind of calmer and more respectful too. So here's a couple of things. And we've talked about this before. We actually have talked about this at the Resident Leadership Retreat too. So Ben's, so my group from Tucson will know about this. Ben's is intentional acts of kindness. So I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but you can go to the website, bensballs.org. And so when you go on the website, you'll see a little bit about it, but it's intentional acts of kindness. Now, certainly getting all these supplies and making all these bells to put around are going to be kind of hard for you right now. But what it is they would hide in the community parts of these, what are these called? The, Teresa, the Ben's bells, you know, they're like things you hang in your garden. Wind chimes, sort of like wind chimes. So you would find them in different locations, and then I think you were supposed to do some sort of act of kindness. And they did that, I don't know, it was, unfortunately, it was after Newtown, Connecticut. In my neighborhood, people were, even though we're here in DC, we were very upset. You felt helpless, powerless. I think there was anger. And so people just started in my neighborhood doing random acts of kindness. So you'd go to the dog park, and people would put a sign that said random act of kindness, and it would be tons of dog biscuits or balls for the dogs. Or you would see, you know, just different things. People would pay for people's food at at the Starbucks or their coffee or something. So it's just really trying to come together as a community. So really that's what you can do in your buildings. And we've talked about this with the residents at the retreat. You know, maybe as the scavenger hunt kind of thing, leave items or token coupons and people in the building, and they can get a prize. And then the winner pays it forward or finds a new place to hide another item that maybe is a gift card or something, you know, or the prizes are hard to find supplies, hand sanitizer, toilet paper, you know, so just something creative that's modified for COVID-19. The other thing that we did, and this was Gracie's idea at the last Resident Leadership Retreat, she came up with the idea of doing warm and fuzzies. And so this actually works, I think, kind of well with our physical distancing, in that we had an envelope and we hung them up, and it was each resident that came to our retreat, might be harder for some of your bigger buildings, but each resident that came to our retreat had an envelope with their name on it, And then these are just examples of, and you could write your own messages, but some of the messages, like we cut these out and put these out so you could put into somebody, you are a gem. And it was up to you if you wanted to sign it. It was supposed to really be anonymous, but sometimes we could figure out who did it. Or wrote a personal message, maybe something that happened that day that that they made you feel good. So you wanted them to know that. So something that, you know, certainly residents can opt into. Maybe, I don't know how you would do it with a really big building, but it's just a thought that it was just something that made us feel good. And so we opened them up at the end of the week, and we told everybody to just take it back to your room and take a look. And you could just tell people were really happy that they got all these messages. They didn't even know who wrote them, but you know, it might be something that happened that day. Like, you made me feel.
Janelle, it's
your comment
Teresa
was really
again.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Teresa again. I just wanted to let you know that Abby gave me information. There's a organization here called Pima Love, and it's just out. It's people that from the community that are sending little notes for the residents, especially people in nursing homes and assisted living, but even a building like ours. And they brought a bunch of notes that I've just been setting on people's doors with those kinds of messages in them. And they've, so far, I mean, I haven't had any like real big comments, but I'm just collecting them, and every once in a while I'll go and just kind of randomly set them out on people's doors.
And that's great. That's a great resource. I kind of thought of this because this would be more your own community coming in, you know, within, building a sense of community within the residents, but that's great too. Anything to lift people's spirits. And so these are just a few things that we thought of from especially the resident leadership retreat that we've done, and just wanted to give a couple new suggestions to y'all. But just remembering that, I mean, everybody is fighting a battle, and we may be fighting it differently. And, you know, there's also people that are kind of blasé about it. And some of that is because they're trying to make a conscious choice because they do feel powerless. So however people behave, a lot of it really is the same source. A lot of frustration, fear, feeling powerless. So just wanted to share that with you all. I'm going to stop the share. Let's see. Okay. All right. I stopped sharing my screen. So if anybody has any comments, any other comments, or, and again, any resources we'll send to you all.